Hi there, this is Kush Sharma from creativepadphotography.com, and in this video we'll be starting off with basics of Photoshop. So how I structure this whole thing is that I'll be showing you the easy things first, and then as we keep on moving, we'll go on to the tougher and more technical things, right? So to start this video, the first thing I want to show you is how do you actually get Photoshop. So of course there's a lot of ways to get Photoshop. You can get it the wrong way, you can get it the right way, but I always suggest that even if you're a hobby photographer and you don't want to really take things forward too much, but you are interested in making your pictures look nice, then I always suggest that go for the paid version of Photoshop. So that is always what I recommend. I'm also an affiliate with Adobe, so I always recommend their products. But here, of course, I won't suggest that you straight away buy this, even though it's very, very cheap. I'll show you right now. But what you can do is you can just apply for a trial of Photoshop, right? So how you do that is you just go to Google and you type Adobe Creative Cloud. So that's the app that you have to download. It's called CC, Creative Cloud. And once you download this app, so you can go to the first link here that you'll get. And then you can click on free trial and just download this. And once you open up this app, after you install it on your computer, within that you can download Photoshop and Lightroom. Lightroom is something I'll be showing you today, just a bit of it and what it is. But that's how you can get it, and I think it's a 14-day trial if I'm not wrong, or maybe a 30-day trial, I'm not sure. But after that you'll have to pay in order to use these two apps, and for that you can later on purchase the photography plan, which is I think around 650 rupees right now in India. So you can just go to choose a plan, and you can see the photography plan here for individuals is 676 per month. So either you can pay, don't go for the 1 TB one, you can just go for the 20 GB photography plan, and this is not much, right? So you have a lot of options. Either you can pay on a monthly basis, or if you want to get a slight discount, you can even lock your 1 year period and pay them together, right? So that is my suggestion to you. Get it the right way, because later on you'll see, as we keep on going deeper in this course, that Photoshop is something which you won't get the updates now, right? Because after they've moved to Creative Cloud, you won't be really getting any updates if you have any of those pirated versions of the older versions installed on your computer. And that makes a big difference in Photoshop, because they really improve the potency of every tool. So I'll be showing you a lot of tools and functions in Photoshop, and how well these functions and tools perform depends on a lot on the version of Photoshop you have. So if you're stuck with a stagnant version of Photoshop just because you didn't want to spend that money, then things can be a bit tough. I'm not saying most of the stuff that I'm going to be showing you will be available to you in earlier versions of Photoshop, but a lot of things won't be available, and they won't be as good, right? So ultimately, if you want to produce good pictures, I think it's a very, very less amount that you have to pay, and that's my recommendation. Go through CC, Creative Cloud, and get it the right way, the legal way, right? So having said that, let's quickly start. So I'm just going to open Photoshop here. I have I have it on my taskbar, right? So also, by the time it's opening, a good point to make is that you really need at least 4 GB RAM on your computer for this to work well. Even with 4 GB RAM, which was my earlier computer, it used to get stuck quite often. So I recently moved on to an 8 GB RAM, an i7 laptop, and it works absolutely perfectly on this laptop, though I was okay with the 4 GB one. Also 2 GB I've never used, but I'm sure you'll be taking a lot of tea breaks in between. All right, so let's open our first image, right? So Photoshop is fairly simple. You go to File, Open, and what I want you to select is, so I've actually put this image so that you can work with me alongside. So we're going to open this landscape image, and in order to access this image, just if you're watching this on YouTube, so in the description of this video you will have the link to download this image, and so that you can work with me. So download this image and open it up in Photoshop. So today what I'm going to show you is a tool which is great for beginners as well as advanced Photoshop users alike, which is called the Camera Raw Filter plugin or function in Photoshop. This is something great for beginners because it's all slider based, and they can just get away with some very, very easy editing for their shots. And for some people, that's what they require. They don't really have to go, you know, dive into full technical editing. That is something that I'll be showing you, and we'll be concentrating a lot because that's what Photoshop is for, right? But first I'm going to show you how you can edit things the easy way. So you can see this shot slightly underexposed and doesn't really look too striking right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit this. So once you open this in Photoshop, you just go to filter and you click on camera raw filter. Okay, now if you're not seeing this option in filter, or maybe it's disabled, you can't click on it, there's a good chance that you're using those older versions of Photoshop which are not licensed, so maybe you're not able to get it there, or you'll have to download the plugin separately and then it will come on Photoshop. But if you got Creative Cloud, once you download the app, you download Photoshop and you download camera raw filter inside the app, and you get it straight away, right? So that's another reason I keep telling you to just get the actual Photoshop and pay the money, right? So we have this image now open inside camera raw filter, and you can see all these sliders here which make the job of editing shots very, very easy. So this is what I call as color and exposure editing, not technical editing, right? So with this camera raw filter here, you can do some very basic color and exposure changes to your shot, and some people only require that much, right? So let's quickly fix this shot and I'll show you how much of a difference a few minutes of editing can really make, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is, since it's slightly underexposed, right, what I can do is I have this slider here called exposure. So anytime you have an underexposed or overexposed shot, you can just play around with this, right? So if I had this, I can go down to this. If I had this, I can go down to this. Now in this, let's say I'm just going to raise the exposure slightly, but not too much, because I'm going to show you a function later on which is going to make much more sense. Because the problem here is the sky is already bright. So if I raise the exposure too much, we're going to lose out the sky completely. We'll get the foreground, but we'll lose the sky, right? So that's not what we want. So actually I won't really make any changes here. Contrast, so you can play around with the contrast slider, which is going to make the darker things darker and the brighter things brighter, right? So you don't really need to do anything right now with this slider. We're going to just leave it. Now this is a very important slider. We'll see these also later, but right now this is very important to us. So highlights refers to the bright areas of your shot, right? So here what the problem we're facing is, I don't know if you can see clearly on your monitor, but we have a nice sunset here, we have some clouds here, but we've lost this because that's what happens. The dynamic range of the sensor of your camera is not able to capture everything that you see with your eye, because your eye has a kind of dynamic range which no camera can match, right? So you'll be able to capture a nice foreground and a nice background if you have a very expensive camera like a full frame camera. And if you don't have, you can take multiple exposures, which is called HDR photography, which is something that I have given the link again in the description of this video. In case you want to learn how to do HDR photography, I've given the link to an article on my website for that. But here we just got one shot, so we're not doing multiple shots HDR, but I want to show you that even with a single shot you can recover the details that you want. So what we want to do is we want to push back the highlight so that we can get some details back in the sky. So you can see how much difference just pulling the slider back has made. Now we can see these clouds, the details here, we can see this sunset, right? Now, the second problem here we have is the shadows. Shadows are the dark areas in the shot, so we have not been able to expose the foreground properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to raise the shadows. So you can see just by moving only 2 sliders, right? How much time does that take? That's like 10 seconds. We have gone from this to this. That's a huge difference already, right? When it comes to white and blacks, what I will suggest you is, it's a great way of adding some contrast to your shots. So what I do is just hold down Alt and then, I don't know what's it called in Mac, I think it's called Option. So hold that down, and what you need to do is just get this slider till the time you see some spots, like here, some white spots, right? So, and similarly with blacks, hold down the Alt or the Option key and then just raise it till the time you see some dots. So this gives a good contrast to the image, you can see, right? So we don't really need to do it from contrast. This I've always found this to be much better, but again, all this is very subjective. You can play around with these sliders do things according to you, it's absolutely fine. I always say go with your own eye, right? Don't simply follow some rule. Go with your own eye and see what suits you, right? So next is clarity. So clarity, just as the word suggests, just means adding some sharpness. So if, let's say, I have a lot of nice stones and rough texture here, even in the trees, so I can increase the clarity just to make this shot a bit sharper. Don't bump it all the way up. It gives a very unreal look, which I don't like. A lot of people actually like this. So if you ever ask a non-photographer whether they like something subtle like this or something like this, 9 out of 10 times they're going to say this, right? So it's only the photographers who make a big deal of things like this, but let's stay somewhere in between, right? Okay. Right, so we have this. Vibrance is how colorful you think, how colorful the shot should be. So what if you want, let's say, this to be more vibrant, you can just increase, but that's too much. So let's say, I think it was already fine to start with, but let's say if you want a slightly black and whitish look, which some people like, you can go push it down. You can push saturation down, play around with these. I'm just going to increase it because we have some nice colors, green and the sunset orange. Right, that's fine. Another thing you can do is, if you had your white balance off or your color balance off, you can change it from here. You can try an auto color balance. So you can see that has added some warmth, but I don't like that. You can go to custom, or you can just go as short, and you can change the temperature from here. You can make it more warmer, you can make it more cooler, like this. So depending on what you had, I think everything was already right here because I had my camera set on auto, and which did a pretty good job, right? Right, so that's about it. So let's say, just with a little bit of editing, if we have gone from this to this, huge difference. So that's your HDR sort of an image just with a single shot. And I'm not even shooting from a full frame camera. This is from a Nikon D5300. Right, so another thing you can do very quickly, which a lot of people like, is you can change the hue of some colors. So if you go to this option here where you can select multiple colors, so you can isolate a color and work on it. So if I go to hue here, and let's say I want to change the hue of this green grass, right? So what I can do is I can just go to green and play around with this. So I made it slightly yellowish. So I think I just pushed it too much. I think this is fine. Let's say if you want to just change the colors of this sunset, maybe add some saturation to this, so only this and not the whole image, right? So what I can do is select, maybe I'm guessing this will be yellow or orange. So let's say I go to saturation and then raise my yellows. So you can see this is becoming more saturated. You can see I've just only isolated the orange color and I've done this, right? What else can I show you? Let's add a little bit of vignette. So vignette is added so that if you have a focal point like this, or if you just want to direct the eye of the viewer, usually the corners are not very interesting, so we like to direct the user towards the center of the image. So you can add a vignette very easily in Camera Raw filter just by doing this. You can see I've darkened the sides, the corners, right? So let's look at the image now. Boom, huge difference, right? And just by some seconds of editing. So this is your color and exposure editing, which can be done so easily, and it's a lot of fun to do it through this. Now I'm going to click on OK, and it simply loads on this to this. So that's great, right? Now if you don't have Camera Raw filter, another thing you can do is you can just get Lightroom. So Lightroom is something I think from which Camera Raw filter was derived, because originally Lightroom looks exactly like this. That's why Lightroom is another software by Adobe, which is normally sold along with Photoshop. So the package that I showed you gets you both the softwares. So for a lot of people, Lightroom is absolutely perfect. And you can see here, I've just opened Lightroom here. It was already open. So you can do the same things here. So you have the same sliders almost. Lightroom is much more it has a lot of other options which Camera Raw filter doesn't have. So it's a much more, it's a software on its own. It's not a plugin or something. So if you're interested in color and exposure editing, Lightroom is also a great option in case you are not able to get your hands on Camera Raw filter. right? So an advantage of camera raw filter is that you can just use one software, Photoshop. And since this video is about basics of Photoshop, that's the reason I showed you camera raw filter first, but I will be making videos on Lightroom too. There I'll show you how you can use and go really deep into Lightroom itself, right? So I want to close Lightroom for now because this video is about Photoshop, right? So this was a landscape image, and next we'll be seeing how to edit a portrait image. So I'm going to open a portrait image, which is this image here. Now this is a raw image. You can see if I just hover my mouse here, this is gonna show you that this is not a JPEG, right? So this is the NEF file or the raw file of Nikon, just like Canon has CR2. Now why you should shoot in RAW is because it's very easy to edit raw images. You get much more data to work with. It's like you're not compressing the image, you're working with the original light information or the light data that your sensor captured. So it's much more easier to open to work with these images when it comes to editing. So let's say we've got a raw image like this. So if I just open a raw image in Photoshop, it's directly going to open in camera raw filter. That's why it's called the camera raw filter, right? And if you have to edit a JPEG image, then you open it first in Photoshop, then go to filter and camera raw filter, just like I showed you, right? So let's quickly edit this image using the same methods that I showed you before. So of course we will lost a lot of data here. I'm not sure if we'll be able to recover because this is definitely an overexposed image, but what I'm going to do is first make the exposure of this image correct. So I think that's about it. Sometimes when you have to recover a lot of highlights like this, what you can do is you can actually go down, you can really underexpose this image because it's easier to raise shadows than to recover highlights, right? So we're going to do this and bump up the shadows to get our man back. Whoops, it's not really working, so I'll have to raise the exposure a bit. And then let's see how much of highlights can we save. Oh, not too much. Okay, so this is one instance where getting the exposure right from the camera is very important, right? Because if you don't, first of all, there's not too much here in the sky that you can actually recover, but if I raise the vibrance, maybe we'll be able to get some colors at least, right? So in this case, what you can do is get your exposure right from the camera, or take two shots if the contrast is so much between the sky and the foreground. But you can see, even if you just go in this, we had this and we've been able to go to this. So this was a really overexposed shot, but still we were able to recover a lot of these vibrant orange colors from the sky, right? So I'm going to just probably increase it more. Yeah, I think that's about it. Just going to raise the exposure slightly. I'm going to make this picture a bit warm because this was during a sunset, so you can just raise the temperature from here, and just probably I like to give some clarity to my portrait, so you just give it some clarity. It adds a nice effect. You can see you've got some lot of details here, and let's just add a little bit of saturation here and a bit of contrast. Right, so if I just show you the original, this is what we had, completely overblown, overexposed image, and we're at least able to recover this image, if not do a very if not been able to do a very good job in recovering the details. But this is at least shareable and much better than what our camera saw, right? Let's just try to recover a bit of the color here. So again, I can go to this colors here, let's say orange, saturation, yellows a bit, just trying to make it more vibrant, a golden hours kind of a shot. Of course you can go much more advanced, but I'm not going to show you all that right now. Later on, when we do go into the technical editing in Photoshop, this would actually be a great shot to technically edit, because we can select the sky separately and work on it inside Photoshop. So that is something where you need to transform your image. That is something where Photoshop does a great job, and camera raw filter may not be able to do a very good job. So camera raw filter is usually used where you need to work on the image as a whole, right? There are some options, like for example, you can use graduated filter which only affects the top part, but you can see in this case it will not be easy to use that because, oops, I think I just closed this. I'm just going to open this back again. Oh great, so I just lost my data because I just closed it accidentally, but that's what I wanted to show you with that image, that just with this is what we started off with, and we were quickly able to edit that image and get something good out of it, right? So again, I've shared this image with you, so in case you want to just edit this image yourself, I've given you the link to download the raw file. I'm just going to show you one more image, which is this. So I'm going to open this. This is a JPEG image of an event I shot, and I'm just going to open camera raw filter, and you can see here not much is wrong with this image. I've got the exposure correct here, but it's just slightly overexposed, so I'm just going to reduce the exposure a bit. And I'm not sure if you can see this, but I'm just seeing a bit of a green color cast in this image, you know, a green tinge to this shot. So what you can do is you come to the option called as tint, and you can just go and reduce the green effect here by just going towards the reddish part, right? So that is giving us a better shot, and rest everything is absolutely fine in this shot. But I just want to show you, you can turn this into a dramatic shot just by, you know, a few fancy changes. Let's say if you're okay with this, great, but let's say if you want a different vintage sort of a look where everything is dramatic looking, then it's very easy to edit your portrait shots and give them a much more dramatic and appealing look. So what we're going to quickly do here is I'm going to go to clarity, so I'll do this. I'm going to reduce the vibrance a bit, because when you're trying to give that vintage effect, we just try to reduce the colors here. And so you can see, just by a little bit of editing, we've got rid of that green cast and given a bit of a dramatic look to this shot. And another thing you can do is go to the individual colors here, select blue, that's what his coat color is, and maybe just change the hue a bit. So you can play around with, just you can see it's only affecting his dress or his suit. And probably decrease the saturation only of his suit. And again, you can see we've got a nice looking shot, dramatic shot from a simple looking shot. So that is also something you can do and play around with your portraits very easily using camera raw filter, right? So it's a great tool for beginners. And in the next video, so I've not shared this image with you to edit because I did not get the permission from this guy, but the first two images, feel free to edit them, learn from them, but please do not share them. In the next video, I will start going into some technical editing inside Photoshop here, so that you can now start shifting your focus from color and exposure editing to what we call as technical or transformational editing, where we'll be doing some things which cannot be done inside Lightroom or camera raw filter. So mostly I'll be going through these functions and some functions within these menus one by one. This was a long video, but from now onwards I'll probably be making videos for each function, so they're going to be short and they're going to be much more easier to watch and learn from. So I hope you like this video. I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.